Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm Kent Justice, your host for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. This week and next, we're focused on downtown. And today, we've got a live wire, a great personality, Jake Gordon, CEO of Downtown Vision, Inc. Let's start here. And what we love about this is we're going to be able to talk through things. It's not rushed. We don't have to jam through every topic. That's what I love about this. Why don't we start with just an explanation, if you would, about Downtown Vision Inc. What's the mission? What's the purpose of DVI?
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Ken. I really appreciate talking about downtown, which I do love. And there's a lot to talk about. Downtown Vision Inc. is a nonprofit. We are not the city. We are a nonprofit. And we are created through an active city council, though, so we partner with the city a lot. And then all of the property owners in a certain district in downtown pay into a fund, and then my organization as a nonprofit manages that fund. And we manage that fund on behalf of the property owners and the city of Jacksonville to make downtown better. And really, it's just kind of like downtown's a destination. There could be a lot of things, but we tend to focus on things that are very specific to what a lot of other organizations like ours do. If you know of another city which you go visit and you go to another downtown, likely it has an organization very similar to ours, Downtown Vision, and we are like the nonprofit that's helping downtown Jacksonville.
Okay, and you said making downtown better. So how do we define what better is?
Yeah, well, there's been a ton of great conversations about downtown, even, you know, with city council talking about the future of downtown. Yeah. It's really interesting for me. I moved to Jacksonville about 10 years ago, and downtown really wasn't really in the same conversation as it is now. It's really unbelievable to think about how much change there truly has been in downtown, positive change over the last 10 years. But just like every city, we're never satisfied and we always want more and more and more. And so there are a lot of things to fix in downtown. And I think it's really good with Mayor Deegan and our city council. You know, the work is never done, continuing to look at it and to try to add what's best. And in an environment where, you know, you can't always, there's not always resources to do everything, you know, you have to be really specific. And like my organization, you know, we look at it on a year-by-year basis. How are we best investing the dollars that come from the property owners back into downtown? And generally, we feel like the things that we do have a high return on investment, but, you know, there always needs to be scrutiny every year about, you know, is this what we really need to be doing?
All right, so as I talk through this, I want to talk about some of the programs that you guys are involved in, some of the things that you've got for people to do. But you've been with Downtown Vision since 2015. How would you describe what's happened in those 9 years? And really what I'm getting at, has it met your hopes and expectations? You just referenced that, we always want more. You know, I mean, that may be that's some of the population says, yeah, we're not doing enough. Some of the people say, that's it, don't go any farther.
I mean, it's a great question on how to compare ourselves to either another city or to us before. Because I think when I got here, it was like, look, we don't need to be a Charlotte or a Orlando. I mean, those are, you know, those comparisons maybe are challenging. It's like a younger brother or sister trying to chase their, you know, siblings, but you could be a lot better than you are now and be a lot better. And I think if you look at Jacksonville, historically, downtown is doing a lot better. I mean, you know, over the last 2 years, there's been about $500 million of investment. And to put that in perspective, from 2000 to 2018, we had about $3 billion in investment. So you look at those 18 years over the last 2 years. And at the same time, you know, we recognize, and our property owners, you know, recognize that there's more that needs to be done. And the reality is, are we keeping pace with other cities like a Nashville or other cities like a Charlotte that have been really investing in their downtown? And I think that's where Jacksonville, if you live here, you love it, but you know it's also very unique. And so actually finding the comparison of a city that's exactly like Jacksonville is challenging. I just talked to someone in Houston. They're a little bit similar to us. You know, maybe there's a number of other, you know, cities. They're not the biggest city in their state, so they have to compete with Dallas and San Antonio and others, which is like us. Yeah. But at the same time, Houston and Jacksonville are very, very different for a lot of reasons. And so you've got to kind of take best practices from other places, but also make them uniquely Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville on some levels is a small town. A lot of our projects are based on an investment of someone that lives here. There's a lot of outside investment, but if you look at a lot of the projects, they are usually with a lot of deep connections to someone that knows Jacksonville really well, because it is very unique, and you do need to have that kind of local knowledge to really know how great these investments can be.
Yeah, that's some of the beauty of these different programs that we're going to talk about here. But I heard you just a couple of examples there. So Houston, I think of, well, they got outrageously good food. You mentioned Nashville. Everybody knows, hey, country music, center of the universe, whatever. So it seems like part of that would be, what's the identity of our city and our city's downtown? That's got to be
You know, that is a great question. I know I just came from the Chamber of Commerce. You know, they do a great job of trying to, there's a leadership trip every year that goes and looks at best practices. The more we travel, though, in my opinion, like there's great best practices to take, but the more that our future, to me, is going to be uniquely Jacksonville. You look at, you know, people love living here. Like if you talk to people, they want downtown to be better, they want our city to be better, but they also chose to live here and they do love living here. And if you talk to them also, there's a lot more recruitment to Jacksonville than there used to be by people that live here. Like you look at the influx during COVID and I'm from New Jersey originally, maybe you can tell by how fast I talk, but you know, the idea of like, being from Jacksonville, like I get calls like every week of people like, hey, you moved there a long time ago. Like, should I move there too? So it's not really a negative to talk about how we need to do better, but we do have to also focus on the positive. And it is a little challenging to not have a signature food that we have or to not have some of those things. And I think to me, this generation that's younger than me, younger than you, no offense, you know, I think that is really who's forging this new downtown Jacksonville identity. And those individuals, if you're 20 to 30 right now, you are interested in what's happening downtown more than ever before. When we do our big concert series, Jack's River Jams presented by ViStar Credit Union, more people cross the ditch from the beach than ever come to normal events. So there's always this weird influx. And they're like, well, we're looking for something that downtown has. And I think that's where I think we do need to harness the younger people. And I think if you look at these investments that are being made from a development, they are really geared towards a much younger person. My board of directors, I have 34 board of directors, generally older. And sometimes it's not easier to be like, well, why are we doing that? And you're like, well, this is really not for you. The demographics are for a totally different, they don't have cars, they do things differently, they understand the internet way better than you or I. So it is really interesting. I think that's where, but a lot of the leadership is still generally older and there's a big influx of opinions and leadership in downtown. So, you know, I think there's, you know, you could go on and on about how we could fix it, but I think generally younger people are forging a new path in downtown, and you see a lot of that just kind of starting to come up.
You talked earlier about DVI. Hey, you're looking on an annual basis. How do we improve things, or what do we need to get involved with? Downtown Vision released the 2023 State of Downtown Report, and it tracks growth, key performance indicators of urban revitalization. Your big, I saw this, it was very concise. Your big takeaway, you said, was exponential growth. So does the report look at completed projects, projects that are currently happening, future project, all of that?
Oh, that's great. So that's uniquely Jacksonville, you know, when people are like, we've heard it all before, things are happening. And, you know, we do have what's quote unquote in the pipeline because, you know, the Downtown Investment Authority in the city of Jacksonville, if it's announced and there's an application in, there are these big transformative projects. And I will say that I will defend that, though. A lot of these projects, like the Four Seasons, is literally under construction. People think that that's like a speculative project. We're like, oh, no, no, no. If you go over there, and even myself, if you go to the landing right now, Riverfront Plaza, the former landing, there is literally construction happening on it. And if you're in downtown every day, you might not even see that, depending on what bridge you take. So I do think, but we do try to take only things that happen. Someone told me, you know, Jacksonville's a more show me than tell me town. We don't want to see pictures of renderings. We want to see, just tell me when it's open. And so I do think that's really powerful. And if you look at that, that's why I mentioned that $500 million is projects that were speculative 2 years ago, have now been approved and are literally under construction. And then I do think that's a meaningful number because $3 billion has been built. I think that's kind of part of, we don't sweep it under the rug, but very little has been built relatively in Jacksonville over the last 2 decades, if you compare us to like a Nashville. And that a lot of that has been post-2015, not because I got here, but because of the economic downturn of 2008. There was a real lack of cranes. We didn't even really have anything in the sky that was being built, and we missed a couple of building cycles, but now we really have this opportunity to be building more things. And I think that's where, you know, City Council and others, we're trying to look at how to shrink the development pipeline because these projects still take a while, 7 months on average if you're applying to the DIA and going to council. And that's where you look at when a project needs to be prioritized, like the stadium, for reasons that were many, many reasons. You look at our community really came together, and I heard that people were like, yes, we really want that. We want downtown to be better. You know, we talk about Jacksonville Beach. You know, that's a great place to live. And also, they're not as open to all of this high-rise development, but downtown is like, let's put it all in downtown and be what other cities have, which is a dense urban center with a lot of verticality and a lot of things happening on a daily basis. And you and I both know you can get to downtown from almost anywhere in Jacksonville relatively easy. And it has always been a little bit the hole in the donut related to this dense urban center. We're really suburban, but any suburb, you can't be a suburb to nowhere, as Mayor Curry used to say.
Well, and to your point earlier about the younger generation is going to really influence this. When we had a family friend move from California a few years ago, and we're showing her around in her 20s. Hey, we got this place, look. And she's like, what's downtown? And ended up spending a year in downtown Jacksonville at a place that had recently been upgraded and provided that opportunity for what you're talking about.
Right. But also, there's probably some more things that she needed. I mean, that's where the on-the-ground experience in downtown, we admit, needs to be upgraded. And that's where right now with Mayor Deegan and the city council, I think there's a new look that like, hey, look, the built environment, how do we get some of these transformational things? Because even though there's been a lot built, I do think that it's right of people to kind of just judge downtown by like, hey, if you come down on a random night and just walk around, is it really at that level? And so no one is trying to say we don't deserve that. We do deserve that. But also, we only get what we invest in. And so you look at, you can complain about the stadium, but actually we as a community helped the property owner, well, the city owns the property, but the owner of the team invest in it, and now we're going to reap those benefits. But also, if you think the stadium is going to transform the walking traffic on Laura Street, well, that's also unrealistic, right? We need a lot more investment if you look at what we truly need. And so both those things can be true. We can be happy at how far we've come, but also need to do a lot better.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about challenges and opportunities here. Stephen Crosby, one of the board members for you, and he said, creating density and centralized activity is tough because of downtown's geography and size. Riverfront, we're told, is an asset, but it's got some challenges too, right?
Absolutely. And Steve Crosby, a longtime board member, DVI, was head of real estate for CSX, has been coming from Ponte Vedra to downtown for multiple decades now. And I think that is one of the challenges is downtowns are not really built on the human lifespan. Like if you look at a Nashville that's like started in the 90s, or we went to Phoenix with the Chamber recently, they started in the early 90s, and you have to make a lot of progress over 30 years. I mean, and you look at even the lifespan of the Downtown Investment Authority has only been a decade. I mean, and that's really like maybe the DIA is 1 year old right now. We're looking at how it needs to change to really empower investment, and that's what City Council is looking at. But yeah, I mean, and then you get the size of our city, which was referenced. And then that's where the DIA has become so essential, because previous to that, it was 860 square miles. Where do you want to invest? Oh, Cecil, oh, the beach, oh, Mandarin. But now at least we have an agency that is only looking at 3 square miles. And if you go to downtown, I've been accused of saying we're going to get a Whole Foods downtown. And they're like, that's not even downtown. That's only like a mile from where we're sitting right now. But yet, even when you go downtown, there's little micro neighborhoods. I mean, the way people evaluate downtown is really on a block face, not even a block. Like if you're in front of Chop House on Bay Street, or you're on the other side, Florida Theater, those are almost two different worlds to some people. That is literally the same block in downtown. And so you do need to build it at a human scale, which we're looking at a lot more of, the landscaping, the improvements, the two-way streets. So there's just kind of unending ways. I think, to me, I don't know, Jacksonville really should look at what other cities have done and try to just copy those best practices, but also we really need to invest in it. And that's been a challenge. I mean, this year's city budget is going to be another challenging budget, I think. Property taxes have been going up, but there's not still that influx. And so there's always way more need than there's amount of money, kind of like all of us in our lives. Sure. So you really have to prioritize what's the highest ROI, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. And there are a number of ways to do that. Incentivizing development still is one of those ways.
One of the things that I think is changing, we've seen it on a path, and then just a couple of weeks ago, you hosted a quarterly stakeholder meeting, and the focus there included BEEP, Autonomous Mobility Solutions. BEEP CEO was a guest here on the podcast previously. So what do you see as the future for autonomous vehicles when it comes to downtown?
Well, we talked about young people earlier, and I know Joe at BEEP, and he's from Jacksonville and really interested. Usually they have some connection, as you can see, and it's really interesting because that is definitely, to me, kind of an older way or a newer way of looking at it. I mean, in my mind, autonomous vehicles are coming no matter what. I mean, you can't be like, oh, we don't need this or we're going to ignore it. And I think that's more of a Jacksonville. Historically, we've missed some opportunities because these public transit we're really looking at it from a more antiquated view, where we were just in Phoenix and there's automated Ubers that you could just jump in and go wherever you want. And we say we want that, but then I do feel like this public transit with Nat Ford and the JTA, there's all of this anxiety related to a lot of their projects that in my mind should be supported. And I think that's where, I don't know if Jacksonville generally, you know, just likes to be like, hey, we really want that, but we don't really want to do what it takes to get there. But, you know, even a place like Nashville has voted down their referendum for public transit. But to me, public transit is an integral part. If you want to unlock this opportunity in Jacksonville, you have to build this transit now. Because if you wait, like a Toronto, like in Atlanta, people like Atlanta, like, oh, it's going to be like this way forever. You're like, Atlanta has almost 3 different downtowns, and every single day that people live there, it gets harder and harder to get around, and they're really trying to add transit now, which it's so much easier to add it earlier. And I think it is hard, though, because downtown has changed so much and our city has changed so much, even in 50 years. I mean, you can't even imagine the level of change there's been. But these transit projects take like multiple decades to even implement. So, you know, I think autonomous vehicles are clearly the future. We have to embrace this technology. We have to support JTA and what they're trying to do. And at the same time, accountability is real. Like city council talking about downtown and talking about how we may have to make changes at DIA or DVI or any other organization, that we should welcome and relish it to have that accountability and make sure it makes sense to us. But for example, the Skyway system doesn't even go to the stadium. I really, the elevated system that only 3 cities implemented, Detroit, Miami, and us. And now you look at it, Detroit and Miami have retrofitted their system already, and there it's used. Like, the same system in Brickell and Miami is our elevated system, and yet for us, for a number of reasons, it's taking a really long time to get the support and to get the funding. Now, it's finally there, and you look at the way the gas tax was passed, which was super positive. The Emerald Trail, which is an unbelievable amenity, that's something that had been talked about for a while, but is now coming. And that's really the compromise, that the JTA is to work with the trails to make sure it's just active transportation. I know, not personally, and he welcomes that challenge related to, hey, let's build this trail at the same time, no problem, and make sure that last mile of trail can connect to transit. I mean, those are things that are incredibly positive, and I think have been getting the attention they deserve, but that is really the way to go, link up transit and not necessarily build a bunch more parking garages in downtown, which we feel like we need now, but do we truly need?
Yeah,
if you look at it 10 years in the future, yeah. You know, technology is a challenging thing. I was just in a building today that, you know, got built relatively recently, feels like a new building. The technology to turn on the projector and all that stuff is all antiquated. So it's like, you know, why do we have this? And then you really have to look at the change of technology is so fast that, you know, it's not the same as repaving a road. You've got to really understand. And that's the thing about Beep, it's so flexible. You can change the stops, you can change everything. And I don't think, my son definitely does not mind. He's 14, about to be 14. Yeah. He doesn't mind riding in a car driven by a computer. That's just not something that's going to be in his head. It's just all about, does it work well? Will it come when I hit my phone?
Well, again, to some of the generational differences there, and you just mentioned technology is changing so quickly. It's not a new theory, but the theory of diffusion of innovation talks about a continuum, a timeline on when people will dive in and adopt a new technology, a new path. And so many people are going to be in the middle. There's going to be some people who are early adopters and say, hey, this is new, I've got to try it right now. It feels like Jacksonville is a little bit more on the later adopters. Hey, let me make sure that everybody else is doing it fine before I dip my toes in it. And that's just kind of a broad, almost a stereotype there. Some people in our city are definitely at the front end. Let's do it, let's advance, let's be the leading edge. But a lot of people are maybe more cautious. Is that right?
Well, I think that's a great example about downtown. I think Jacksonville is a wonderful place to raise your children, to be married and raise your children, and I think that's a lot of those people could be born and raised here, but there hasn't been this big influx of young people like you're now seeing in Nashville, where they want to go to where the action is, and a downtown usually becomes part of that. Yeah. And even Savannah has created, even just 2 hours away, they've created this kind of nightlife atmosphere, and they have the port and they know what they're doing. And I think that you look at that, though, we truly have the opportunity now to be that kind of place, and that does go to the decisions that we're making on a level where, you know, older people and people that have experienced the city in a while. And so to me, the best part of Jacksonville is also there's a lot of opportunity for change and making it better in downtown without displacing anyone that's there. That's some of these other places, that's the calculus. But if you're going to embrace technology, for example, transit is a great place to do it. I mean, public transit, the idea that that should be, and I do think JTA has kind of, you don't think one step ahead, you look look like 4 steps ahead. But I do think, to your point about the culture of Jacksonville, I've lived here for 10 years. You kind of figure that out. We like to kind of grumble and kind of not dip our foot in the water yet. And at the same time, we like to complain about what didn't happen over the multiple decades. Well, if you look at places that have taken big swings, those are the places that are now reaping the benefits. And so I would encourage people to think more openly about, especially in an area like downtown where we have a ton of opportunity. Even when Calford Chop House opened, people were like, they're gonna sell steaks for how much? And I had people complaining to me, and I'm like, you don't have to buy these steaks, but now you look at how well they're doing, like a luxury restaurant experience is a priority right now, way more than 10 years ago, and they were kind of on the tip of that. But it is interesting how people really want to have a little bit like they moved here because of a certain way and they don't always want to change it. There's always this anxiety. But you look at some of that, I mean, that's the new retail, is these restaurant destinations, which you still can't buy on the internet. I mean, if you go to Calford Chop House, it's an unbelievable experience. You can't get that at home. You literally can't.
No. Hey, so I've seen the email campaign recently asking readers, live, work, or play downtown? We want to hear from you. So 3 different surveys. What are you trying to find out, and how would you ask people to respond to you?
Yes, please go to our surveys, downtownjacksonville.com. We want to be open about what people want. I mean, that's one of the other things that you see Mayor Deegan is prioritizing, transparency, and related to making sure that we're not just doing this for us or some rich developer or something, that we're bringing the amenities and doing the things that will help all of Jacksonville. And so that's why we do a survey every year about both if you're a visitor to Jacksonville or if you live there or if you work, because we realize there are 3 different questions we want to ask. And, generally, we definitely want to hear it. It's interesting how those things are changing. For about 10 years in a row, homelessness was at the top in terms of the people that live there, because there are a lot of unhoused on our streets of downtown, and we need to do a better job of that. And we have been with JSO and with the mayor's office. But more and more you see vibrancy and places to eat and retail experiences, because I think other cities have done a better job of adding that. And we do have programs for that, but that goes to, renewal and rebirth are challenging. You look at Sunray, a beautiful amenity and 5 Points, and now they just announced that's going to be a different, and you see just the anxiety to your point earlier about how that happens. But we do want people to do the surveys, because it's not supposed to be what Downtown Vision thinks or what the property owners think. So, and that's the thing about Jacksonville. You truly have an ability to make an impact. I mean, if you talk to a city council person, they are open to thinking about what residents want. And I think that's something I don't think we embrace enough, and how we really have a lot better opportunity. I mean, if you're in Washington, D.C. right now, and you're just a regular person walking into downtown, you don't have the same ability to make change that you seek like you do here. The barrier to entry to opening your own business in Jacksonville is so much lower than other places. You can find space, and the community wants to support you better than ever. So there are amazingly good parts about Jacksonville. So yes, we want people to do our survey and tell us what we should change, and also what's great about it's not just what needs to change, but also what's great about
you want that feedback.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go through a couple of the programs that DVI offers, and just make sure you as a listener, or you're watching the podcast, that you know that these opportunities are out there. So there's a new open container Riverwalk to Go Cup program. It was passed by City Council in Jacksonville at the beginning of the year. Came to light for many people during the 4th of July. So help explain this. You can purchase a drink from a bar or restaurant that participates, and then you get this Riverwalk to Go Cup, and then you get to stroll along the Riverwalk there, right on the river.
It's been very successful. I think people don't, I guess from the business aspect, this is a best practice that we looked at in Tampa. The chamber took a downtown trip to Tampa. There was a number of people that were like, why don't we have this Riverwalk? Well, their river's different than ours in a number of ways. It's slower. You can have kind of stand-up paddle boards and stuff. But what we didn't have was, why are there these bars and restaurants right on the river that are literally connected? We stayed at that Tampa Water Street, and then that's really an example of some of the stuff the Gateway is doing now. But there's this, there's this connection between the Riverwalk and our businesses that we don't have. So we thought, well, how can we do that? So Friends of the Riverwalk in Tampa, sells these cups, and it's a similar thing, and you're allowed to drink. And, drinking is something that's accepted in a totally different way than it was about 20 years ago. And so, we, DVI, and also Build Up Downtown, Downtown Investment Authority, Visit Jacksonville, and the Chamber, and City Council, we're all working on that for about 5 years. I mean, this is where you really think the backlog of how all of this needs to happen. And so that is something that if you go to DTJack/Riverwalk, you can find out all the information, but the the elevator pitch is basically the restaurants on the Riverwalk now can serve you a to-go cup, and there's no problem at all going into Ruth Chris, drinking at that wonderful bar, getting a drink, and then just walking right out those stairs and onto the Riverwalk, where previously you weren't allowed to do that. And the reality was, if you wanted to break the rules, people were breaking them. So it's really more about embracing that for the people that want to follow the rules like me and the people at Ruth Chris, and you're trying to unlock that and making sure that it is unified. And so there's First Friday at Friendship Fountain right now, which is an amazing amenity. So they are adding to that with their cups. But really, it's about supporting our restaurants that are on the Riverwalk and creating that connection. And so people shouldn't be worried about getting a drink from one of their bars. The Hyatt bar on the North Bank used to not be able to leave the Hyatt, and now you can cross that street because the city exempted it and go on the Riverwalk and walk all the way down to Ram with your drink, which is something DVI definitely celebrates, even with property owners like First Baptist Church is on our board. They don't appreciate alcohol in terms of their religious beliefs, but the idea is that this is not about the exact thing you're doing, but there needs to be more on the Riverwalk to embrace economic activity and also vibrancy. And it shows that Sip and Stroll presented by PNC on the South Bank has showed that people just want a reason to walk our Riverwalk. They just want a reason to get out there and drink and walk around. So there is a ton of support for this from all over, and it really is a good best practice that we did shamelessly copy from Tampa, who is doing a great job on their Riverwalk.
Why not, if it works, right? And I guess I would just ask there, how do you measure success on an event like that or a program like that we've only had for 6 or 7 months now?
Oh, well, for us, it's not about the short term, and it's interesting you mentioned it took about 6 months to even ramp up. I mean, right now, admittedly, we don't have as many restaurants on the Riverwalk as we probably deserve.
I saw about 8 are participating right now.
About 8 participating locations. You have to already have a liquor license and be on the Riverwalk and be contiguous per the area. But what's interesting is this program also leverages new investment. So you look at what they're building at, the Whole Foods and that project on Riverside Avenue. That's going to be an amazing amenity for, these retail that's building new is going to be like, oh, wait, instead of building the way I built, let's build a different way so we can embrace that and make sure that we can utilize that. And you look at Riverfront Plaza and some of these restaurants that are being added, this was kind of a necessary thing to kind of unlock some of that. So it's not just about how you can use it now. That said, the Riverwalk is absolutely gorgeous. It's an incredibly expensive piece of infrastructure for Jacksonville. It has been getting so much more use since COVID, and it is amazing how much work the city has put into making it a place. And the one thing we're missing is just more amenities. So you're not allowed to bring your own alcohol from home. You have to buy it from one of the restaurants. But we encourage people to—
It's a good trade-off.
That's what it is. Walk the Riverwalk, buy a drink, support our small businesses. Yeah. It hits all the things that if you really want more waterfront restaurants, well, you have to, Chart House. You have to buy a drink from Chart House right now, and you can walk right out. And, you can buy your first 2 drinks there, and then the third one to go, which is, we think is a really good value add for the Riverwalk and for Jacksonville overall.
Yeah, you mentioned Sip and Stroll. So I know they're on summer vacation here for this time, and it's on the South Bank there. Next one's scheduled in September. What makes that successful? And if people don't really know, what's the difference in the experience you get on the South Bank versus something on the North Bank?
Well, we have a great marketing department at DVI, but it's interesting because our events, like a lot of times, people are always like, oh, I didn't hear about this or I didn't. And the reality is we want people to find it. Like, we're not trying to twist anyone's arm to come down to Sip and Stroll. But the reality is during COVID, we wanted to do our fundraiser gala, and you couldn't be in a room with each other, and we were all in masks. So we decided, our event manager, Haley Tinkle, was talking about, well, why don't we just do it on the Riverwalk, and people can just sip and stroll with the people they already know. So it came out of that, and then that amount of support for both that gala and that fundraiser. Then PNC Bank, which is Sip and Stroll presented by PNC Bank, which wouldn't be possible without the sponsors. Their leadership was integral in saying, hey, this is an amazing amenity and we need to keep it going, and other influential leaders around town. And so we spun it off into be third Thursday to be the Sip and Stroll. And it really is a similar thing to the Cups, the same mission, but different way of doing it. Everyone likes our Riverwalk, but there really wasn't any reason to go there any specific time. And when we said to some of the naysayers, well, we're just going to put some live music out there and put a bar out there, and people were like, is anyone going to go to that? And now it's very, very popular. So popular that it exceeded the permitting immediately, and I had to permit it differently. And that's one of the reasons why. But one of the things we realized, it is on hiatus right now. This part of Jacksonville, you can argue about what's the best weather in Jacksonville, what month, which I Do not think, when you go to Buffalo, New York, and we kind of looked at Buffalo for some of our stuff, and they only have to program 9 months, and there's no argument on when the best weather is.
Yeah,
here in Jacksonville, it's definitely interesting, but
yeah.
everyone said June, July, August, super hot, and people still come out, but we're trying to really, like I said, relook at it every year and make the best decisions. The reality is, it's not just a weather-based decision, but we are going to be able to reinvest all of those resources as a nonprofit. So if you haven't been, September's is going to be unbelievable, because the Riverwalk actually has grown now with Friendship Fountain online and all of that. We actually have, there's construction all up and down the Riverwalk, which is a positive sign, makes it more challenging, but we're going to program even further in September than we ever have. So, I think we heard from a lot of our stakeholders, even the property owners, 9 amazing events is probably better than 12 other ones. And I think that's where it also allows us to plan. And so, there's a ton of thought into the events that we do and a ton of work that we do with the property owners to make sure. But the reality is not everyone wants it all the time. I mean, it has been, it's almost like a Jacksonville tradition already, even though it's only been around for the last couple of years. And we are thankful for that. But also, we've got to make sure that we support it the way we know how.
Yeah. We'll wrap up here, but I know First Wednesday Art Walk, that's not a new program. That's 20 years that's been going on, obviously, and happens once a month, obviously very successful for you guys. Last thing, you mentioned Friendship Fountain a few times. Are you and I going to go do yoga out there? There's a free yoga class right at Friendship Fountain. I'm not necessarily volunteering. I think I'll have to work because it's in the evening.
I couldn't keep up with you,
7 to
Ken.
8.
I could not keep up with you.
Probably not even close to true.
Look at that fountain, and Lori Boyer, who's now the head of Downtown Investment Authority, and you look at City Council, there's been a lot of focus on that fountain. That's been an unbelievable, it's one of the biggest fountains you can have kind of anywhere. It's unbelievable. What they've done, the city has done, is, created that infrastructure, and now it's literally thinking 4 steps ahead. If you haven't seen it, it's an unbelievable amenity. It's something we can be proud of, which is when people ask me, what does downtown need? Things we can be proud of. There's so many more people than even I thought would be there on a regular basis. There's so much need in Jacksonville to take someone on a first date somewhere, or to go somewhere that's free, or to look at, the beautiful city skyline. And actually, the better skyline view is from the South Bank as opposed to the North Bank. And if you look at the way that fountain is, it just shows that that's uniquely Jacksonville, and it's just amazing. But it isn't just about, just like the Riverwalk, you can't just build the infrastructure. You've got to support it with this activation strategy. And you look at what City of Jacksonville Parks is doing with their team and the mayor's office, Mayor Deegan and her focus. There is more activation around that fountain than ever before, and that's similar to Sip and Sproul presented by PNC. And that's where DVI has always been in that work, but we can't be the only ones doing it. And that's where you see there's a lot of opportunity in Jacksonville through our placemaking and others to add more activation, because the reality is we can never have enough in terms of stuff happening. And so if there is, First Friday is going to have stuff around the fountain, and also we're going to have a First Friday event in the Elbow at the same time, and it's because we need all of those things. And whoever is going to come out to those things, and it's really just, if you want to support downtown, you should come to just one thing and then support it. If it's to the Florida Theater and the events they have, you can go there. But if you go there, then also maybe eat downtown and do one other thing. And it's the force multiplier of the millions of people that now live in Jacksonville. Everyone can just come down and just spend a little bit of money and enjoy their time. So if it's not for you, no problem at all. No one has to do yoga. But if you just want to come down and sit and look at the fountain, and it's an amazing show that goes off every so often. I mean, we rival Las Vegas now with this fountain show. It really is incredible. And I think people are looking for things to do, and I think there needs to be something for everyone in downtown.
Yeah, lots of options. Jake Gordon, it's been too long since we got to chat like this, but I really appreciate the time today.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk.
Of course. So thanks to our guest. Jake Gordon is the CEO of Downtown Vision Inc. And next time, we've referenced this a little bit, Lori Boyer is with us, the leader at Jacksonville's Downtown Investment Authority. New episodes drop every Thursday at 9 a.m. We thank you for joining us for This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition.